Okay, here we are live on
Hey.
Therapy Thursday. My name is Letty. I'm with Epic Consulting, hosting this space for Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'd like to introduce Kanuli Martin, who is going to share with us what is happening on Thursdays and then the rest of her team. Kanuli?
Awesome. First, we want to thank you, Letty, for allowing us to come on and share. For May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are Henrietta Weill Memorial Child Guidance Clinic. Our site is Delano. Personally, we think it's the best site of all. And we're glad to share about, we chose two topics that are probably the most pervasive or well-known, or they're mood disorders, and these are probably the ones that are where you will find clients kind of having the most diagnosis in. So that would be depression, and we're having part one today with the very lovely Natalie, who's a associate marriage and family therapist. So we'll have depression 1, depression 2 with Lupe Juarez, who is going to be the main presenter, licensed marriage and family therapist. And we will have a discussion on anxiety with Yanni Torres and Chris Boyd. And that will be week 3 and week 4. So team, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
So again, I'm Natalie Rios, and I'm an associate marriage and family therapist with Child Guidance in Delano. So I'll be doing the presentation today on depression, part 1.
I'm Yanira Torres. I am an intervention specialist at the Delano Child Guidance Office, and I'll be presenting in a couple of weeks on anxiety.
My name is Paula, and I'm an intervention specialist over in the Delano area.
My name is Chris, or Christopher, and I am a associate social work or clinical social worker over in the Delano area.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. If you are checking us out, following us live, please feel free to comment at any time during the broadcast. And if you have questions, we can answer them. If you have comments, we will try to get them on so that for the benefit of the group, for the benefit of whoever's watching the live stream. Natalie, if you're ready, we can go ahead and get started with our presentation as soon as Letty figures out how to get you on. Hang on just a second. We're going to make this work, everybody.
That's going to be great.
Okay. And so we'll share some information. We'll get a little deep in some of the definitions, and then we'll have a conversation about what those things mean. And then the clinicians will share some coping skills. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so depression, what is it, right? Everybody, I think that, in society, we throw around, the word depression, I'm going through depression, I feel depressed. But what does it really mean, like, to have an actual diagnosis of depression? If you look at the DSM, which the DSM is the main book that we use to be able to give people the diagnosis of depression or anxiety or anything else. There's multiple different types of depression. There's major depressive disorder. There's persistent depressive disorder. And so both of those are kind of like the same criteria. There's just slight differences, but just in general, in order to have the diagnosis of depression, you must be experiencing 5 or more symptoms, whether it's during the same 2-week period, and at least one of the symptoms should be depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. Depression can be, something that's been going on in your life for a very long time, years even, or months. There's no really time frame of how long your depression has to have been going on. Some of the symptoms of depression are, again, depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. What does depressed mood mean? I think that one's kind of tough because it can be different for different people. Depressed mood can be, you know, feeling sad, but it could also be feeling empty, you know.
Great.
For some people, when they're depressed, they just feel nothing. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be feeling sad. Marked diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities, most of the day, nearly every day. You know, things you used to love, suddenly you don't love to do those things anymore. And it's not that you grow out of it, you know, because sometimes through life we just suddenly we don't like painting anymore because it's not our thing anymore. It's more like you love those things and you wish you could still love those things, but for some reason you just can't find yourself to have that motivation to do those things that you used to love. Significant weight loss when not dieting or weight gain, which has to do with, you know, the appetite thing, decreasing or increasing in appetite. You might overeat, you know, to cope because you feel depressed, you want to fill that void that you're having, or you might undereat because you lose your appetite. You're no longer hungry because you're feeling depressed. A slowing down of thought and a reduction of physical movement. So, you know, my supervisor, Kanuli, she likes to give this example often and when we meet in group supervision about how, imagine Eeyore, you know? Eeyore is always like, you know, moving slowly, talk slow. And I've actually seen often, like on social media, posts where they compare the Winnie the Pooh characters to certain diagnoses. And for sure, Eeyore is always associated with depression. And it makes sense because he's slow moving. He has lack of pleasure in activities. Everything's just blah to him. Another one is fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. Goes back to the whole, you know, moving slowly thing. When you're tired, when you just feel tired all the time, you don't want to be active. You don't want to be moving quickly. You just want to just be, you know. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. You start having thoughts of that, you know, nothing's going right. What am I even doing? I'm worthless. You know, you start feeling bad about things that you do that maybe you shouldn't even be feeling bad about, but it just happens. And so all of that has to do with just negative thoughts that come with your depression. Diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. You know, you start having trouble thinking, and so you can't make a decision, and you're just having thoughts all the time, and they're negative thoughts, going back to the inappropriate guilt, worthlessness. Recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. So, you know, for some people, it is, you know, when they think of suicidal thoughts, they think, oh, that person has a plan. But sometimes it's just thinking of the idea of death. You know, what if a car just ran me over right now? You know, what if I just jumped out off of this bridge? And so it doesn't mean that they're going to do it. It doesn't mean that that's their plan, but it's just a thought, an intrusive thought that comes into the mind of, you know, because they're depression. Okay, so, you know, there's new specifiers for depression. The DSM, which is, again, our book that gives us all the criteria for when to diagnose someone with a mental health disorder, that gets updated all the time. So with this new DSM-5, you know, there's mixed features, and this specifier allows for the presence of manic symptoms as part of the depression diagnosis in patients who do not meet the full criteria for a manic episode. So manic, it's just basically having like a period of time where everything's kind of just excessive and extra. Think of like super happy, but to the point where it's concerning, you know, and it's like, this is not their typical happiness. This is like the most, or they're doing things that are not really part of their personality, spending a lot of money, engaging in risky behavior, things that is out of character for that person. And then, or they can have like anxious distress, which is the presence of anxiety. And which is interesting because most of the time, well, not most of the time, but there are a lot of the times where people who have depression could also have anxiety, and it's possible for them to exist at the same time. So to receive a diagnosis of depression, these symptoms must cause the individual clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And it's not because of substance abuse or some other medical condition. So at Child Guidance, we work a lot with children. So when the parents bring in their child to get an evaluation from us to get assessed for a diagnosis, we don't just look at what is it that is happening with this child, what are the symptoms, what are the behaviors, but we also look at how is this affecting them in their areas of life, which is where is it causing impairment in their social, occupational for the children would be, school, but obviously for adults it would be work. So is their depression causing them to not be able to socialize with other people? Is it causing them to not be able to, express their feelings appropriately? Is it causing them to not go to school? Is it causing them to suddenly not turn in their homework because they can't concentrate, and so they're failing now their classes? Other areas are like independent living, which is being able to just do things in daily life, like take a shower, feed themselves. Another area that's not on here is physical care, which is if they have a medical condition, are they taking care of themselves? Are they taking their diabetes medication? Because, I get a lot of clients that sometimes have those types of medical conditions, and they just refuse to take their medication because they're depressed. They're thinking like, what's the point? The worthlessness.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second because we have a comment or a question, and we'll address this. So what is the difference from just being sad and depression, and when should you start being concerned? And this is something that we can talk about in the panel, but I know that we've got a couple slides here. So I just wanted to make sure that we knew that someone was asking the question that we're going to be answering soon.
Okay. Which we will answer that question, actually. Okay. So aside from the emotional problems caused by depression, individuals can also present with the physical symptoms such as chronic pain or digestive issues. Depressed individuals also present with irritability, brooding, and obsessive rumination, and report anxiety, phobias, excessive worry over physical health, and complain of pain. So, it's not just a mental thing, it can also become physical. And actually, it reminds me of I think it's called fibromyalgia. That's been said that it's because of depression, that people are getting these physical symptoms because they're depressed. And so instead of it coming, they might be feeling it emotionally, but it's like, I guess because they're not dealing with it, it starts to come out in their physical being where it hurts. So the chronic pain, and just other stuff. It's kind of like stress, stress also ends up becoming physical. So, we got to take care of our emotional needs.
Very good.
Okay.
So here's the, sorry.
Yeah. So sadness versus depression, right? So sadness is a normal emotion. Everyone experiences sadness. It's often caused by a specific life event, such as loss, whether it's like your job or relationship or death of a loved one. And then depression, when it comes to depression, a trigger is not needed. A person suffering from depression feels sad or hopeless about everything, whether there has been a painful life event or not. This person may have every reason in the world to be happy, and yet they lose the ability to experience joy or pleasure. And I think it is very important to know the difference between sadness and depression, because I think too, sometimes in our lives or in our society, we feel like we're not supposed to experience sadness. It's like it's a bad thing, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think it's like It's good to experience sadness because it's a way to know that you empathize, that you're able to feel, compassion towards something. It's also a sign to you that you cared about something when it comes to having sadness because of a loss. And loss can trigger depression. We're not saying that loss is just sadness. It can trigger the depression as well. But again, we have to refer back to, you're sad, you're feeling these depression symptoms. How is it affecting you in your daily life? Are you sad, but you're still able to go to work and socialize with others and eventually find ways to make yourself feel better? Or is it now becoming a problem where you don't want to go to work, you don't want to eat, and you can't find any way to make yourself feel better? And that's how you know when your sadness is sadness and when your depression is depression because of an event. But again, sometimes depression isn't caused by anything. Sometimes people just have it, and it's like a chemical thing, maybe a hormonal thing. Sometimes it's just unexplainable. Okay. With sadness, even if one feels down in the dumps for a short period of time, one might still be able to enjoy the pleasures of life, such as a favorite TV show, food, or spending time with friends. Again, like I said, people can find ways to make themselves feel better by doing those things that they enjoy, right, when they're sad. But then with depression, this isn't the case. When someone is dealing with depression, even activities that they once enjoyed are no longer interesting or pleasurable. They try to eat their favorite food, they try to watch their favorite show, and sometimes that's just not enough. When you experience sadness triggered by a life event, a person may still be able to sleep, remain motivated to do things, and maintain their desire to eat. With depression, on the other hand, it is associated with serious disruption of normal eating and sleeping patterns, as well as not wanting to get out of bed all day. Again, goes back to, is this negative feeling affecting me? Is it impairing me? Is it stopping me from doing things that I'm supposed to be doing or typically do? In sadness, you might feel regret or remorse for something you said or did, but you won't experience any permanent sense of worthlessness or guilt as you might with depression. One of the diagnostic features of depression is a sense of worthlessness or guilt. This kind of self-diminishing negative thought pattern is often pervasive. So, something happens, you feel sad about it. For some people, able to move on to sadness, right? Depression, you think about it and you think about it, you start feeling guilty, you start thinking about how you could have done something differently or that you should have done something differently. And so you just get stuck in there. You get stuck in this depression and these negative thoughts.
Can I ask a question here? Because I wrote down intrusive thoughts, and I'm wondering if that's something that you can, is that referring to this? Is that something that you can talk a little bit more about identifying if someone is having an intrusive thought versus just, worrying about something, or are they the same?
Can I answer?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, all right. So I would say that with depression, there are ruminating thoughts. So yeah, you will chew on something that you can't really, it sticks with you. It's hard to just push it off. Like it stays. Intrusive thoughts, though people who are depressed experience intrusive thoughts, I would say if I had to put it in a column, intrusive thoughts, I think, are experienced when someone has anxiety. I would say anxiety, because intrusive thoughts are thoughts that almost you'll be just sitting here and then all of a sudden, boom, the thought comes. Whereas depression, it's more like a building block of thoughts. I think with anxiety, it can be a building block, but with the word intrusive, it means that you could be just walking and then boom, it's like a block. It hits you like a brick. It can intrude. And so I would say it is linked with both, but I think when we talk about intrusive thoughts, I think typically as clinicians, we kind of connect it more to anxiety than depression, even though, again, people with depression can have intrusive thoughts. I hope that was clear as mud.
Thank you.
Okay. So when you're sad, sometimes, sorry, I got tongue twisted. Okay. With sadness, you don't really think about suicide or wanting to hurt yourself. You just kind of just feel sad. And so right here, that's another difference between sadness and depression, that where with depression, you will start thinking about self-harm or suicide. And self-harm and suicide are not the same thing. Self-harm are ways to hurt yourself, but not intended to kill yourself. It's more just to relieve the pain. Such things as cutting, or even other things that are like excessively exercising until it hurts. That's another way of self-harming. And then, suicidal thoughts are actual thoughts of killing yourself. But, I do think it's important to know that there is a difference between self-harming and thinking about suicide.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we answered the question that was posed about sadness versus depression. So, yes. What's the difference between just being sad and depression? I think we talked about it. When should you start being concerned? And I think Natalie spoke to that. It has a lot to do with how the symptom impacts you. With depression, again, it's more pervasive. It's more, I can't get out of the bed because I just feel so bad that it really interrupts your daily activities. With sadness, you can be sad, you can cry, but you're still going to get up and go to work. But with depression, major depressive disorder, for example, it really can waylay you, and that you really cannot function. So that's where you start wanting to be a little more concerned, where you're feeling like, I cannot function. I can't get out of the bed. In fact, I was talking with someone some years back, and they found out they were on medication and said, oh, I didn't know, this is a family member, I didn't know you were taking medication. When did you start? When I couldn't get out of the bed. I literally could not get out of the bed. And so that's when it becomes more concerning.
Sorry, I was muted. That last slide said coping skills, and we're not going to use slides for this next section because we really want the clinicians to kind of chime in and give their own, maybe, I don't know if it's their favorites or their, something that they know that they can recommend as a coping skill for their clients. And I have them kind of in order, but I don't know if whoever wants to go first, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and or I can call them out, and then whoever sent that to me can be the one that speaks up. Maybe we'll do it that way. It's easier for me, so maybe I'll go first. I had this is one here.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's from Marcella, though. She's not on.
She did send me a video, though, so
Yes,
if you don't mind,
awesome.
we can do like a short, and all this does is kind of show what this technique is, and then maybe we talk about it on the other side. It's about a minute, but it'll go by fast. And I recommend to everyone watching, to whoever's following, to practice this, because I did it when I ran through the video and it was very calming. So let me get that up on the screen for us. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, the audio is not going to play. Hang on just a second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Natalie, you did a great job.
Yes, she did.
Awesome.
I tried, because I really did want to make like the emphasis of like the difference between sadness and depression, especially because, like I said, people feel like people can't be sad, but that's not true. Sadness is normal.
Right.
And so it's important to know when is it a problem versus when it's not.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if this
Close your eyes, and so whatever's going to be best and most comfortable for you. So let's go and get started. And let's go and get started by just finding where's most comfortable for us. Just kind of experiment. Does this feel good here? Does this feel good here, or on your knees? So take a moment to find that. When you find that place, let's go and get started with just a deep breath in. So taking a deep breath in. When you reach the top, hold for just a moment. And then exhaling. Just let it come out, just natural as can be. And then just slowly start tapping. Just alternating sides, alternating the taps, knowing that whatever you choose is a-okay. If you'd like, you're also welcome to add a positive affirmation to this. It may be I am loved. It could be I can do this. Maybe I am in a secure and safe place. Whatever seems to fit for what your need is right now. Feel free to just add that in. And just repeat it to yourself in your head. And just remembering to keep tapping for as long as it's comfortable. If you need to go a little harder, you're welcome to if it needs to be gentle. Again, just experimenting and see what fits for you right now. You're welcome to do that.
Okay. So do we want to take a moment to talk about this a little bit since she's not on this call?
There is a modality called emotionally focused therapy. And I know with EFT, there is tapping involved. I think the theory is that there's a pulse point that you can find on your system that will alleviate some depression. I'm actually not sure if the butterfly hug is connected to emotionally focused therapy, but when she started saying tapping, that's what it reminded me of. I thought maybe that's a skill used in EFT.
I thought it was really cool too, though, just because, sometimes with like depression, I feel like we need to figure out ways to make ourselves feel better when no one else is around. A lot of times with depression, people feel lonely, feel like there's no one there. And so why not give yourself a butterfly hug, to know that you're there for yourself. You're able to, not be alone, even though you are alone, but, you can be there for yourself, I feel.
There's actually even a whole science behind the theory of touch, good touches. And so there was a study actually done in Germany where babies were dying, and there was an older woman who came in, and she began to hold the babies. And so before she came in, a very high mortality rate. And then after she came in, the mortality rate began to decrease. Babies weren't dying. And they found that the one thing that changed was this older German woman coming in and holding the babies. That's an actual study. So I think there is a science to good touches and safe touches.
That's amazing. I've heard that story. It's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so got gratitude exercises here next.
That one's mine.
Yay!
So for practicing gratitude, I found that it has helped with decreasing the depressive mood, especially when you have like that loss of interest in things that you used to find pleasure in, and also with things that we just kind of don't pay attention to anymore when we're in such a depressive mood. So the way that these work is basically identifying 3 positive things that you are grateful for daily, and writing them down, just so you don't forget that that's something that you're grateful for. Some examples can be something as small as a spoon to feed our mouths. It could be something as simple as like the clothes that we wear on our backs. And maybe the water that we have in our home that's running. But make sure that there are three things, and make sure that they are positive. We want to make sure that we maintain that positive mindset so that we refrain from, those intrusive thoughts or those negative thinkings. And also, with gratitude, practicing small acts of kindness, something as more like smiling more, even though we know we're not in the mood or we don't feel like it, but even just simply practicing smiling more and practicing saying thank you.
Very good.
Okay. I don't know if this is referring to the same thing that you were just mentioning, or if this is a separate one.
I think that's another clinician. I think that's Michelle, who will be on next week.
But I like this idea, this back to basics, connecting to gratitude for whatever it is, because you're really changing your mindset. I mean, like you're saying, I didn't even think about running water because I take that for granted. So
I actually have a story of someone who shared that they struggle with depression, but they started going to like feeding lines. They were starting to feed the homeless. And so basics, food, shelter, clothing. And they, the shelter was, as safe as it could be. There was food there. They had clothing, and it's basics. But the person was saying they recognized that even though they had those things, they had so much more than who they were serving. It just really made them feel like, how dare me, be upset because I had a bad day at the office, or I didn't, achieve this this performance goal I had in mind for my, Fortune 500 company. It just humbled them. And so that speaks to kind of being appreciative about basics, food, shelter, clothing.
okay, what about a media detox? I don't remember who sent this one in, but
Michelle. This is Michelle's. Yeah, that's hers. I'll speak to it. I know as a clinician, I've shared this before. I don't do as much therapy, being a program manager. Who has the time? I don't do that as much. But Law and Order SVU used to be my favorite show.
Oh, I love it.
After hearing stories of trauma, and sometimes it's not just trauma, you're just impacted by, your clients and what they are walking through. I can't watch Law and Order SVU. I can't hear this, news. It's rarely good news. Most of it is bad news, So I think it's important to monitor what you're taking in, especially for clinicians, which we have talked about. Many people are empaths, and they will carry the burdens of the world on their shoulders. People they don't even know. John down the street. Oh, I can't believe there are, people who don't have food in Africa. You don't know them, but of course you're concerned about them. So I think it's good because you can begin to carry other people's burdens when you're barely able to stomach what's going on in your own life. So
yeah, I actually with a lot of my clients are teens, and they're really into like murder stuff, and like very serious things, songs that are like depressing. And so when I talk about coping skills with them, and I usually say stuff like do things that you love, listen to music that you love, watch shows that you love, but I always add, but like make sure it's happy stuff, because if you're feeling depressed and you're watching something that's depressing, then that's just gonna make it worse. So I'm like, instead of listening to a slow, sad love song, listen to a cumbia, like something that makes you want to dance, because I go, then you're just gonna make it worse. So I always want to emphasize that too, like make sure it's something that's happy.
Yes, and who doesn't love cumbia?
Right. Okay. Journal writing. Recommendations? Is there something specific Is it just get out a piece of paper and start writing? Is it writing your feelings? What's the recommendation here?
When I've done it with my clients, I let them write about whatever they want. Sometimes I'm like, hey, just let the feelings out so you can get it out of your system. Because if you don't, then it just kind of, like my supervisor said, ruminates. It goes over and over in your head, and then sometimes you just have to let it out somewhere. Or it goes back to like the gratitude journal, or exercises. Write down what you're grateful for. When I was thinking about the gratitude thing, that sometimes I will say at the end of the day, write down what went well throughout the day. Because sometimes, we focus on the one bad thing that happened in our day and forget that there were some good things that happened. And so I think just journaling about anything that you really want, as long as it's helping you, I think, it's up to you what works best.
Very good. I think, Chris, I thought you had something you were going to say. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things I've seen with resistance to journaling is usually clients will say, I don't want to sit there and write, like, dear journal, today this happened. And I think starting out, it doesn't necessarily have to be writing. You can just get a journal, get paper, whatever you want, doodle, write down your grocery shopping list, and just remember to keep it with you. And just every time, I got to write something down. You get in the habit of doing that. And then when something big happens, it'll become instinctive, like, oh, I need to write this down so I remember it, or I need to write down how I feel. And you start building that behavior up. And it's worked with a lot of clients that were resistant initially, and they're like, oh, I doodle in it. Oh, now I write my feelings down and I doodle. Oh, now I do, my goals are in here, and it just becomes part of you.
That's a good point, because I think I heard a lot of, instead of doing the to-do list, to do already did list. I do that. I always write lists every day because I have so many different things I want to get done. But I also, if I did something that wasn't on the list, I'll add it so that then I can give myself sort of a congratulations. So it does make me feel better and think and be mindful of all the positive things instead of, oh no, I didn't get these 10 things done, but I did these other 2 things.
Yeah, well, I think that's great, because it brings a sense of accomplishment or a sense of self-efficacy. And that's one thing that people, when they are depressed, so I think journaling is just a good skill that everyone should do. I think it's just really good. But particularly if someone is feeling depressed, they have a sense of worthlessness and a sense of, I'm not great. But if they can write down, this is what I've accomplished, then it speaks to the worthlessness and it increases self-efficacy. And confidence, and increases self-esteem. These are things that I have accomplished. So
something too that I was thinking of when Chris was talking, that like how he said, just write anything down. Like, there's been times where I've told my clients, write a letter, write something, and they're like, but I don't know how to start. Like, I'll say, just write whatever. It doesn't even have to make sense. Like, just write random words to get it out. And I think that, there's a lot of pressure of like, how do I start this? Like how he said, the diary, it doesn't have to start with your diary. Just write whatever.
And I would add to that, there have been people who've, trauma survivors who, we know about the Gestalt method of speaking to an empty chair, what you want to say to the, the person who's wounded you or abused you or whatever. But I think also writing letters to the person who hurt you, wounded you, is also a really good way of de-escalating some of that anger. Particularly, I've had clients who the abusers have passed away and they aren't able to have that conversation. So journaling or writing a letter to the abuser was a way to release some of that pain, anger, unforgiveness. So.
Yeah, and if you need another reason, they did a study of CEOs of a lot of Fortune 500 companies and asked if your house is burning down, was the number one thing you'd grab out of your house besides your family. And every single one of them said, I'd grab my journal because I can rebuild everything with it.
Wow.
So if you need famous people to help you, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, ASMR. Who wants to tackle this?
I'll tackle it because I love ASMR. I don't know what anyone else in here is the one that sent this one in. Michelle. Okay, well, I love ASMR.
What about it?
I know one of my friends is watching because she commented, and she knows that I love ASMR too. But to me, ASMR is more like for anxiety. I don't know if Michelle just kind of sent it just as a coping skill in general. But I mean, I guess it could be for depression if that's something that makes you feel good, it makes you feel happy. So, ASMR, it's videos on YouTube, and I don't know if they have them on any other types of medias, but on YouTube for sure. They have videos where people are doing things that cause sensations in people, like to feel relaxed, to feel good. It involves like whispering and tapping and eating. And so I use it a lot to go to sleep because it makes me feel relaxed. So I guess, if your depression is causing you to not be able to sleep, I think that watching an ASMR video would be really helpful because it can help distract from whatever is keeping you awake, any negative thoughts that you're having, because now you're putting your attention to the ASMR video. So
that's good. I think one of the things about ASMR is that it's to stimulate the senses. And when people are depressed, sometimes they're numb. There's just this, like you said, Natalie, I thought that was really well stated, that sometimes with depression, you just feel empty and you don't feel anything. You're not feeling anything at all. And I think ASMR, for those who aren't feeling, it can stimulate the senses. So.
Okay. Let's talk about self-care. I think we've talked about some of these things already for ourselves, but I think there's some specific things that whoever sent this in had in mind. Chris?
I think I sent that, but I'm surprised if I'm the only one. I think with depression, we just get so run down and your batteries are just drained. And just remembering to just take time to care for yourself, do things that make you feel better, things, go to the beach, listen to your favorite song, make your favorite meal, like pet your dog, any of those things, anything that helps you feel more emotionally recharged. Like recently I was working with someone who was really struggling with depression, and they went out and got their eyebrows done and bought like lip gloss and was like just went shopping and like came back almost like a completely different person. And so just remembering to like, you matter, take time to show yourself you matter, and you'll start feeling better, at least a little bit, and then you can start facing what you're dealing with.
Very good.
Okay, this is one I really like and I want to hear more about.
I love primal therapy. It's a huge field, but in general, especially with depression, is I find a lot of the kids I work with, they get to the point where they just don't know how to express what they're feeling, and they don't know how to get it out. And so sometimes we'll be there and like, oh, let's talk about how you're feeling about this, or and they're just like, you could see the buildup of like just the emotion. And so I have a stuffed animal actually in my office specifically for the purpose of screaming into. And it's like, I tell them, it's like, look, my coworkers are completely used to it. Just pick up the bear and scream at the top of your lungs until, just scream every single bit of that pain out as much as you can. And, and then we'll talk. And I find that it kind of like empowers people to like find their voice again, like, to just see the power of that scream, of their pain, their feelings, without actually like having to live in that. It gives them that break, and it empowers them. So it's one of my favorites, especially with depression.
I think that that does help. And do you think this has anything to do with or is connected with that? And I don't know what the study is, but where they talk about if you yell and scream or curse when you get hurt, that alleviates some of the pain. Is that sort of connected?
They did a study where it showed that cursing actually increases testosterone and it increases your pain tolerance. It does, and a part of it, that's one way we respond aggressively is your body primed for it. But I think it just releases that energy, you know, and you get that ability to just kind of like vocalize it with vocalizing your pain without actually having the words to vocalize it. You're just releasing it all. And it's really funny to get the weird looks when we leave the office too. So
I'm going to share, not to always make things about me. Maybe I need therapy. But when I had shoulder surgery, and my husband can attest to this, apparently when I came out of it, I was cussing at everybody. I was cussing at the nurses. It was like morphine and just, it wasn't pretty. So even though I don't remember it, I'm sure my brain was like, this is what you need right now. I apologize to everyone. Okay, here's another one here. We've kind of touched on this, but if there's more clarification here.
Yeah, I think this one was mine also.
Oh, I should have mixed these up. Sorry.
Just all in a row. It's all good. So I think, especially like we talked earlier about with depression, you get stuck in the cycle of thoughts, and it just kind of you're just like, oh, it's horrible. My life's horrible. Everything's horrible, and you just get stuck in a cycle. And so it goes back to like the gratitude journal and the making a list of things that went well and. Focusing on like, oh, today, like I was supposed to clean the house and do my laundry and go to school. It's like, oh, but I got up and I put my clothes in a pile. Like that's infinitely better than yesterday when I did nothing. So like just really focusing on like the tiny progress you've made and just making it like this is important. And then you start feeling that like pride of that, of like I accomplished something. And then just pushing through because it's just focusing on tiny little steps, especially for those that are chronically depressed and are just really lost in that depression.
Yes.
Any movement in the right direction is what it takes to start healing.
Okay, I'm going to share a comment that I think is going to be kind of a good way to wrap some of these ideas up. Richard has commented, talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. I love. I don't know how you guys feel about her, but this has worked for me in a lot of ways because I know that I will catch myself saying things to myself that I would never say to anyone else, no matter how upset I was. So do you want to, I don't know, Kanuli, if you want to maybe.
Yeah, I heard a woman, Sarita Jakes, say, be your own best friend. Like there are certain things that you would never say to your girlfriend. You're so fat and ugly. You're so lazy. You're so, these are things you would never say. Well, to a friend you would want to keep. You'd never say that. And so you treat yourself the way you would your friend. You be your own best friend. So it's kind of the same principle.
We also have sort of a thank you. I appreciate you guys taking the time to give a better understanding of depression and sadness, and the coping tips are great. I agree. I think maybe it's probably good to have this kind of conversation where you're sharing professionally what are some of these things, but some people may be doing these things and don't realize that they're doing them because they're self-soothing or because they're coping with something. And so, to also be more self-aware that those things are happening, and maybe like Richard asked before, when when is it time to ask for help if it's not helping me.
Yeah. And I also want to say one thing about depression. How do I say this without being disrespectful to my own field that I dearly love? It's very depression, true depression is debilitating. You cannot function. And I don't want to just shine the light like all you got to do is write some words down in a journal. I mean, or, you know, my own coping skills, no disrespect. When someone is depressed, you really have to claw your way out of a hole to even do the coping skills. Because when you tell someone, hey, like with, you know, what works for people, and Chris, you spoke to this, is when you're depressed, you're kind of in this space, and you don't think, oh, I need to now. What's good to do is have a schedule, because it helps shift you. It moves your perception. And when you're depressed, you're stuck in the stink hole of your thoughts and the stink hole of, you know, I can't get out. And it is really, it's climbing your way out is not easy. And that's what I want to share with everyone. It's not twirl around 3 times and poof, alakazam. It's a work. It takes work to get out of it the best way you can and get through it. And, you know, I want to say at this point, I want to encourage everybody to reach out to somebody. The one thing about depression, I think, and, you know, mental health, we talk about mental illness, there's this stigma, this shame, you know, oh, there's something wrong with me because, you know, I'm so depressed. And so we want to remove that stigma and encourage listeners. If you are feeling depressed and you're feeling like I can't get out of the bed and I can't really function, please, please, please call CGC or call a comforting friend, a friend who is going to be kind to you and who can help you walk out of it. So I know we're going to talk more about this session 2. We'll have a part 2. And we have some stories we can share about, you know, how people came out of the grave, so to speak, of depression. So.
Thank you. I know there was something else we wanted to share about building happiness. Henrietta, I don't know if you want to share that next week so we can actually go through the whole thing and make some slides about it. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that works.
Okay, great. I didn't want it to be like, oh no, we left somebody out. So I realized you didn't share. You can talk a little bit about it, and maybe that'll kind of lead us into next week if you want to talk a little bit about it. I don't have to share it, but.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it was just kind of like what Kanuli said. I mean, building happiness takes work, especially with someone dealing with depression. It just takes a lot of work. Just like Kanuli was saying, you know, it's like just crawling out of that hole. And so what I was going to share is with a lot of my clients, I take more of that individual take where everyone's different. Happiness is different for everybody. And so I have an info sheet where I kind of go through it with clients and just explore with them what happiness means to them. And so there's a little bit about gratitude, there's journaling in there, meditation, exercise, acts of kindness, and I can go into more detail about it next time, but it's a lot of different examples on how to build happiness. And it takes work. It's not easy.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
So we can build on that next week. Okay, we're right up at the hour. If there's any last minute thoughts you want to share as we wrap this up to lead us into the next week. Kanula, I know you kind of wrapped it up already. Anyone else have anything else they want to share?
No,
you guys are amazing.
No. I just wanted to say that I really liked what Kanuli said at the end, because I was thinking about that too, that we really needed to just emphasize there that, you know, if someone is experiencing depression, to just please reach out for help, because, you know, you don't have to do it alone.
Right. Yeah.
Do you want to share a number? I can put a phone number up if you'd like.
Sure. We'll just give you our number, 661-725-1042. That's Henrietta Weill Memorial Child Guidance Clinic, the Delano site, 661-725-1042. We're going to deep dive, I think, a little more. I just sense like maybe that's something we need to do in our part 2 of depression. I think we did a great job in kind of we have an hour to talk about a really debilitating, pervasive diagnosis. And so, we were able to dig into the surface part of it. I think we're going to go a little deeper, go to another layer and talk a little bit about really. So we talked about the symptoms, the textbook, but I think we're going to share the stories of how difficult and debilitating depression is, and success stories, how people were able to climb their way out, because there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we want to help people find it.
Okay, you've got some appreciative viewers here.
Thanks. You guys did so good. I'm so proud of the team, Delano. You guys are awesome.
This has been great. Yes.
Great job, guys, all of you.
It's not easy to be in this format, knowing that, you're sharing this, putting your face out there. Thank you so much for this opportunity to help host, because I know I want to bring awareness to this, and it's the perfect month to do that, obviously. To getting to know all of you. I know that you have a lot of clients that you work with in the area. A lot of them are young, and so maybe there's people out there who are like, I know someone who can help you, and maybe you'll get that kind of support from each other in the community. But I think it's great for people to see who it is that's managing these things in our area. So thank you so much for spending this hour with us. And to everyone else, please join us next Thursday. It's Therapy Thursdays all month. Next week we'll dive a little bit deeper and share some more stories, like Kanuli said, and then the next 2 weeks after that we will be talking about anxiety.
Awesome.
All right, there's a phone number if you need it. Thank you, everyone. U6, hang on. I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone else.
All right.
See you next week.
Thanks, Letty.